We have arrived at the easiest job in this whole project, which is installing the base. So I'm using a Weaver number 506. It has 4 screw holes, and it comes with a convenient 4 screws. Each of these is going to get a drop of Loctite on the threads, and the long screws go in the back, short screws up front. I can't tell if they made these regular screws because it was cheaper or it was a way to prevent people from over-torquing. Let's just call it best of both worlds. Of course, just like when doing auto work, make sure that you go back and check the torque on each of these. Tightening one tends to untighten the others. Before I proceed with finding my optimum eye relief, we need to take a look at a couple of things on this base. I thought this would be straightforward, but as usual, things need a little tweaking. I put the scope on just to see what would happen, and I did notice that there is a difference in the 2 different sides of this rail. So if you put this base on with the ejection port on the right side, where it kind of should be, you get more rail sticking out front over the barrel nut, and you get less on the backside here. So what I did is I had to turn this around because the bell of my scope was actually knocking against that. And when I was testing my eye relief, just a quick little test, I'm still getting the same problem where this is starting to bump against the rail here. So what I'm going to have to do is actually shave off a little bit of the rail right here just to give that tiny bit of movement that I need so I'm not bumping against the bell. This should give me the extra bit of relief that I need. There are all kinds of calculations out there that make it seem like it's complicated to figure out what your eye relief is. There are measurements you can do from your trigger or from your butt pad or something. But I'm going to use the tried and true method of just looking through the scope. And what I've done is I've kind of simulated the environment that I'm going to be shooting in. I'm going to be prone, I'm going to be on a high rest, so I just have this cheapo plastic rest here to fill in for whatever I'm going to use later. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get nice and comfortably into position, close my eyes, and then open them. And this should be looking straight through the scope. Now I'm finding out one issue already. My comb is a little bit low, so I'm kind of looking below the scope right now. I'm looking at kind of a dark field. I have to cheat up just a tiny bit in order to see through the scope. So I'll probably have to put just a pad of leather or something on here so that I can look directly through the scope. But this distance is looking pretty right on. Okay, so get off the rifle, get on it, nice and comfortable, open my eyes, and there we go. Yeah, I'm still a little low, but I have a nice field of view when I pick my face up just a little bit. So this is going to be my eye relief. I have my longitudinal position for the scope all ready to go, but I need to make sure that everything is level before I lock it down. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to assume that this base is my level plane, and what I've done is I've locked it down in my vise, and I've used a bubble level here on the flats here to make sure that everything is level. And this is going to assume that the reticle inside the scope itself is actually level. And what we can do is we can use the flat on the underside of the scope, and as long as we get that level with this, then everything should work out okay. This is the flat on the underside of the scope that I was talking about, and not all scopes have this, but most modern ones do. So I can use this as long as this is level with this, then everything should be okay. The rings that I've selected for this build are the Weaver Quad-Lok rings. They're very inexpensive, but they're also quite good. One of the things that I really like about these is the squared off crossbar that fits into the slots in a Weaver rail or a Picatinny rail. Instead of having a single strap across the top, you get these two, and I really have no idea, what difference having two versus one makes, but I've been using these on my varmint rifle for a good long time, and they work very well. The thumb studs, if you want, you can make this kind of a quick detach setup, and you can just screw these down thumb tight and then pop them off later, or you can cinch these down really good with a screwdriver. Putting 1 drop of Loctite on each of these screws, I'm going to pre-install these, and what I want to do is make sure that there is equal installation on each of these. I want there to be an equal gap on each side of each ring. So what I'll do is I will turn each of these a specific number of times. I think I'm going to do 8 is what I calculated earlier, but 8 turns with each to get them roughly in place, and then I'll screw each one down until they're even. I've applied just slight tension to each of these screws so that the scope can't flop around, but it still can't, and we can move it around just a little bit fore and aft as we align the scope position up with our tape ring that we established earlier. So now what I need is something that is verifiably flat, and this steel ruler, it looks like, is working out perfectly well. So here I am aligning it to the base, and there I am applying it to the scope, and you can see that the bubble level is off. So I just need to twist this until the level is on, and that should be right about there. At this point, everything should be correct. We have the right longitudinal position, and we have the correct cant, and now it's the business of tightening these down evenly on each side to prevent it from canting under the tension of the screws. One nice thing is that as I get this torqued down on one of these rings, then that pretty well ensures that this isn't going to cant anymore. But one thing I need to watch out for is over-tightening. I need to make sure that I am not crushing the tube, because this is a 1-inch aluminum tube, and it can actually crush quite easily. And I need to make sure that there are still those equal gaps on each side of the ring. There are specific torque recommendations for each of these screws, but I do not have a torque wrench that does inch pounds, so I'm just going to do this by hand, and I'm just going to make sure that I don't crush things down. Using my steel ruler, I'm affirming that yes, the two are parallel to each other, so that's still looking good. But what I need to do next is verify that everything is plumb, since the reticle could actually be off in here. It could actually be canted inside the tube. I'm going to go ahead and verify that by using a string or something else that's plumb, and I'll just hang that from my garage door or something, and as long as it goes straight through the reticle and then straight down the center of the tube as I'm looking through the barrel, then I think we should be in good shape. Everything's looking good so far. I've taken a peek from the back end of the rifle, and things are looking good, but we'll just take that one last step of verification, and then I think we can call this good to go.